Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Last Wrestling Podcast. Because if I have a wrestling podcast, everybody else in the world does too, and the concept's officially dead. And I think I should probably come up with a new intro, all things considered. Today we're going to be taking a look at what has been going down the last week or so in WWE specifically. The massive firings of WWE employees at the worst possible time for human beings, and the best possible time for a soulless corporate succubus. Beginning in, I believe it was the 17th of April, might be getting the date wrong because of the time difference here in Japan and over in Stamford, Connecticut, WWE released nearly 30 professional wrestlers and road agents, producers, whatever they're calling them now, from their roster. Now, these were the things that were publicly announced. A lot of the actual firings were office staff, writers, etc., people who work behind the scenes, and that number is said to be in at least the triple digits, with some reports saying that WWE has laid off 40% of their workforce in the middle of a pandemic where right now there are no other jobs. If you get fired, you can't go get another job, especially in any kind of entertainment and media, because unlike people who have $20 million to give to Donald fucking Trump, nobody else is running anything. So there's no jobs for writers, there are no jobs for cameramen, and there are certainly no jobs for professional wrestlers, because there are no shows. How much of a heartless bastard do you have to be to lay off 40% of your workforce after you've already laid off everybody involved in your idiotic, egotistical football league? In Japanese, there's a word or a phrase that describes places like WWE. Black Company. While the exact definition of a black company does vary from case to case, generally it means a corporation or company that is abusive and exploitive of its workers, whether that means forcing them through peer pressure or threats of firing to work illegal amounts of overtime for no overtime pay, whether that means sexual harassment or power harassment, abuse, verbal abuse, sometimes even physical abuse from superiors to inferiors, whether that means disparaging the reputation of anyone who has left the company, or just generally treating your employees as replaceable, expendable tools rather than the human beings that allow your business to exist. And WWE is a Puroresu Black Company, period. But what really pisses me off about this is that none of it was necessary. WWE, by their own claim, now they might be completely bullshitting about this, they might be trying to work the investors, which is completely effing illegal, by the way, but according to WWE, they have $500 million. That's their liquid assets plus debt that they can call in. Now, some of that debt's going to be from the Saudi Arabia deal, which means I don't think they can actually call it in, but let's use their number that they gave out. $500 million, that means they could have spent less than 1% of their accessible money and paid for every single one of these superstars, for lack of a better term, these wrestlers, salaries for an entire fucking year. And let's maybe add another 0.5% on top of that for all of the writers and the behind-the-scenes people they probably don't pay particularly well. This is absolutely nuts. And the worst thing, they're being rewarded for it! Their stock jumped because of this! Okay, is this how you get the... Do you want the guillotine? Do you want the French Revolution? This is how you get the guillotine and the French Revolution. This is let them eat cake. This is Vince McMahon's let them eat cake moment. Jesus H. Christ on a 2x4. Fuck this company. And you know what? One last thing before I get off of the rant here. Other companies with far less in the way of resources have been doing the honorable fucking thing and being good corporate citizens rather than using charity as a sorry, focus. Ring of Honor. A company that, quite frankly, has been hanging on by its fingernails for the last couple of years, paid all of its wrestlers, all of its ring crew, all of its talent, all of its human resources for shows that didn't fucking happen. They did the right thing. They even made sure that international talent could get back to their home countries before the travel bans came down. As someone whose entire long-term life plans have been put on hold by those travel bans, thank you, Ring of Honor. You did a good thing. Here in Japan, New Japan, All Japan, a bunch of other companies as well, petitioned the Diet and specifically said, but a Diet is it's based off the German term, the National Legislature, National Assembly, petitioned them for some bailouts, but said that wrestling is probably the last thing that needs to come back. So we're willing to wait. We're willing to take one for the country here. And on top of that, New Japan Pro Wrestling has said that they're going to pay all of their talent, all of their wrestlers, their contracted salaries. They're not going to be getting, bumps from merchandise that they're not selling. They're not going to be getting percentage of gates that aren't happening. But they're getting, to use the American or the WWE term, they're getting their downside guarantees. They've guaranteed that nobody's getting fired, nobody's getting furloughed, and nobody is going to be without an income at this time. Because while it's possible we may get roughly $1,000 in American terms, 100,000 yen a piece, that's going to be weeks or months down the line as far as bailouts go. And frankly, at this point, I don't trust the Abe government to actually get it done. But, moving on, there are wrestling companies out here that are doing the right thing. And the industry leader, like it or not, the industry leader is not one of them. Okay, rant over. In the interest of attempting to look on the very light positive side of this, I recorded a little bit of footage on WWE 2K19, which, by the way, looks like is the game we're going to be sticking with for a while if you're a fan of the Animated Wrestling League. This match is not canon to the AWL, and I've decided that we're going to take a look at each and every one of the released wrestlers, at least as of the time of recording the footage, that, with the exception of some of the NXT people that, frankly, I've never heard of, most of them. And let's take a look at some positives. Where would they be a good fit? And or, if I had the pencil, how would I use these people? Now, does that mean I'm going to be bringing all of these characters into the AWL? No, it doesn't. Right now, we've got a pretty full roster to begin with. I don't necessarily have space for these characters, though there are some wrestlers here I would give my front teeth to get my hands on. But for your visual entertainment, as I discuss this, please enjoy the April 2020 WWE Release Rumble. So this will be a Royal Rumble-style match. Over the top rope, both feet hit the floor, etc., etc. I think I set this for a minute in between entrances. I don't entirely remember. Recorded this a couple of days ago. But that should give me time to talk about each wrestler as they make their debut. No audio on this, no music, no crowd noise, because there are no crowds anymore. Unfortunately, I can't just delete the crowd from the video. So anyway, we're going to go through this in... I tried to put this in an order that made sense, talking about some of the biggest names first, and with some of the tag teams and the later and the lower card guys a little bit later. But again, this is a non-canon Rumble, and would you get the bloody hell on with it? There we go. We're starting off with number 1, Kurt Angle, the recently retired Olympic wrestling machine. And I really think this is a case of last hired, first fired. From what reports I've been able to read, Kurt was still getting used to the role of a backstage producer, hadn't really proven himself in that role. He was still learning the ropes. And as a result, especially when they're firing guys like Fit Finlay, Lance Storm, Shane Helms, guys who have a bit more experience with this kind of thing, there's no way they're going to keep Angle if you're cutting, frankly, much better producers from your roster. Now, do I think Kurt Angle's, I think of everyone on this roster, if he never goes to another wrestling company, I think he'll be fine. But if anyone's going to bring him in, I think if AEW were to bring Kurt in, that would be fantastic. They're doing a really good job of using veteran wrestlers, retired old guys, as coaches for younger stars, newer stars. So that, I think, is a good idea. And then we got the one that I don't know how they fucked this up. There's been a few NXT call-ups over the years that have been, okay, you had to work hard to screw this up, and Rusev was one of them. Even you can see in this now close to 2-year-old video game, Happy Rusev Day. How did they not push that to the moon? I don't get it. I haven't seen the most recent episode of Monday Night Raw, but from what I understand, Lana is still employed. So, good for the family. Get some money coming in. That's nice. Rusev, I'd kind of like to see him in New Japan. There's always a role in New Japan for the big-ass gaijin. And this guy has Vader, Hansen, big-ass gaijin all over him. If he goes to AEW, I think this is the one guy from this set they can afford to bring in and move straight to the top. And again, about 1 minute between entrances on this. How is this never a match that we got, by the way? Rusev and Angle. Rusev, I think he works better as a babyface at this point because he is the guy that the fans, well, so much for that, and that should automatically trigger the 10 seconds, I think. Yes, it does. Rusev, I think, should either go to New Japan or TNA. God, no, don't do that. AEW. Up next, Drake Maverick. Now, this is one of these real Swiss Army knives of a character. He can do manager. He can do cruiserweight wrestler. He can do authority figure. I don't think he could do a referee at this point in his career. But he is fantastic. Once the travel bans are lifted, I think it might be a good idea for him to go back to the UK, try to help revitalize the UK independence scene. And it was less than a minute, apparently. I don't know. If I were to bring him in, I would have him as a manager who very occasionally wrestles. Now, these next two guys, I don't have to tell you anything because I know exactly where they're going. And if they're not, they're idiots. New Japan, again, as soon as everything starts up again, I keep saying that, I keep qualifying this. Positive. Assume people are running shows. These guys will be back in the Bullet Club like that. Hopefully the click of the fingers was audible there. Have they been damaged, though, by being literally murdered by The Undertaker? I don't know. I think you'd have to do a series. You couldn't put these two straight into a title match, I don't think. You'd have to... If I'm booking New Japan, if I'm Gedo, I bring these two in as an unaffiliated tag team. Everybody's going to assume that Gallows and Anderson, they're going right back to the Bullet Club. They're right back with that bastard Kenta. No. Actually, have them attack the Guerrillas of Destiny. Let it be a bit of a question mark, who they're with for a few months, and then settle them into a stable. Chaos, maybe. they might work in LIJ. Coming up next, Eric Young, and someone who's on the latter end of his career, just time-wise, I think. Oh, I had to say it. Somebody finally fired Eric. We've been telling you, don't fire Eric for 15, 20 years now. Like Drake Maverick, and I like the fact these two are working together here, sort of. Eric Young is a guy that could be a real utility player. I don't think he's got top star in him. I don't think he's got world champion in him. He could be a major boost to MLW. EC3. Here's what I would do with EC3. Bring him in, and anywhere you bring him in, go with the 1%er gimmick. The rich have you seen the world in the last 7 years? People hate the 1%. People hate the rich bastards. Oh God, could you imagine this guy in a tag team or a full stable with MJF? You know, along with Wardlow as the muscle or the business partner of MJF. Hello, or maybe with the Inner Circle as sort of the thunder for the Inner Circle. Curt Hawkins, nothing really to say about him. Curt Hawkins. Oh God, what the hell would I do with Curt? Honestly, bring Curt Hawkins in as a jobber to the stars. He's been too badly damaged, I think, and honestly, with him, you know, wrestling can become a hobby. Now, Lio Rush. This is where I get annoyed because I don't like Jim Cornette. I don't like a lot of the stuff he says, but the problem is I find myself agreeing with him half the time, and that is the case with Lio Rush. Lio Rush is a $1 million manager. If he can just keep the heat off of himself backstage, he could be the next Freddie Blassie. And that's high praise, and I mean every word of it. This guy has a true gift of gab. And if you've got a junior heavyweight division like New Japan does, I think he could be fun with a trios group opposite Rocky Romero. That'd be fun. But make him a manager who very rarely, if ever, wrestles. Moving on to Heath Slater, the only member of 3MB to never be WWE champion. I'm going to say that again. The only member of 3MB to never be WWE champion. Bring this guy in, give him a chip on his shoulder with an inferiority complex. Because he's the only member of 3MB to never be champion. Aiden English. Manager, again, authority figure, actually. I think he'd be a good authority figure. He's got the voice for it. He's got the British accent, especially, you know, British accent to Americans. That means smart and evil. I kind of like to see a reunion of the Vaudevillains, or Vaudevillians, however they phrased it. Because that was a team that I thought they didn't, especially if you're a fan of the history of professional wrestling and theater, performance, etc. There's a lot you could do with that. You know, get Simon Gotch or whatever he's going by these days on the phone, put the band back together. Now we also, and then the Colognes were there. You're done, guys. Sorry. You had so many chances, and you're basically the tag team that's famous for, wait, I thought they were released like 3 years ago. So, maybe, again, if you need a name to job to the team that you're putting over, maybe bring these guys in on a one-shot, but forget it. There's a lot more money in a Vaudevillains reunion than there is in a Shining Stars reunion. No, honestly, the Colognes, if I were to bring these guys into the AWL, I would feed them to a team that I'm trying to build up to go after the Augments. Yeah, I'm getting behind the scenes, I'm breaking the kayfabe and all that. Bleh. And I'm coming down off a rant high, so yeah, this is going to be weird. I completely forgot the order here. Who's next? Eric Rowan. Keep him the flying fuck away from AEW. We cannot have him and Brody Lee in the same promotion for at least the next 5 to 10 years, because Brody Lee has the chance to break out and be a serious single star. I've been following Brody Lee since his Chikara days, and he's got all the tools in the toolbox, and he's wasted the last couple of years. Keep throwing the fuck away from him. Another guy that could go to Japan and play the wild, crazy, evil foreigner character, I think, fairly well. Up next, Mike Kanellis. And because we can't put women in the Royal Rumble match, we're going to talk about Mike and Maria. Put these two together. I am a hopeless romantic. I love the idea of the power of love, real-life couple tag team. Maybe bring them to Chikara, or where you could have the intergender matches. But I want to see what those characters, the Love Conquers All, can do when it's in a promotion that's not being written by people who hate women. Zack Ryder. Can we say TNT champion? Zack Attack. Friends with Cody. This guy could fit pretty much anywhere. I don't know. What would you do with this guy? There's so many of these guys that the easy trap is to fall into the I was underutilized in WWE and therefore you should cheer me crap that TNA fell for about 100 times too many. And it didn't work. It never worked. What I think Zack needs to do is we need to see how creative this guy really is. Zack Ryder needs to come up with a whole new character. He needs to come up with something that is completely different. He needs to reinvent himself. He's done it before. I think he's got what it takes to do it again. But I think he's most likely going to wind up in AEW. I don't think there's a role for him in Japan at the moment. Assuming we sort of start things up again. No way, Jose. No way, Jose. This guy's going to have to start all over. He's going to have to get a haircut, go down to the independents, stop dancing, and he's going to have to another complete repackage. This is Leo Kruger, Adam Rose all over again with No Way Jose. The entrance got over in Full Sail in NXT, and Vince didn't get it, but he liked this. The character wasn't developed. Who is No Way Jose? I don't know. You don't know. I doubt he knows. Screw it. Now, the rest of these wrestlers were actually released a little bit before the mass firing, and we're talking about the Revolt. This is the team that you bring in and push to the goddamn moon. Maybe get Jim Cornette to manage them. I don't know. He might do it. If you want to open that particular box of snakes in your promotion, I wouldn't if you don't have to. But bring them in, and it depends on the promotion where they fit. If your promotion is the future of pro wrestling, then they're heels for being old stodgy dinosaurs. If your promotion is wrestling the way it should be, then they're baby faces because they're tag team experts and they're really good at it. I think they could get over as heels even in that situation. I think they're better as heels, but the instinct is going to be to push these guys as baby faces, and if you don't, at least initially, I think that's going to put heat on the promotion for not making them the good guys. So yeah, if you're going to bring in the Revolt, one, change the porn star names, and two, give them, let them be baby faces for a while until it turns out that they're assholes. Okay, up next we've got someone who technically got fired back in 2019. And I'm including him to round out the numbers here because this is a guy that has an interesting story. That is Kuniko, the second Sin Cara, now known as Cinta de Oro, the Gold Ribbon. the second person to wear the mask. Apparently, the original Cinta de Oro was a mentor and a trainer of Sin Cara, and the family of the original Cinta de Oro has given their blessing for him to take up the mask. And that weird sort of scar-like line across Sin Cara's mask that he had for a few months before he left WWE, that was a tribute to Del Oro, to Cinta de Oro. And it's cool that he's going to actually get to keep that. But I like the idea that he's going back to Mexico, he's taking up the mask of his mentor, and he's going to be this, and hopefully he's going to be the star that he deserves to be. I still think Sin Cara, especially with the original Mystico, backstage drama notwithstanding, was one of the biggest screw-ups. You had a legitimate superhero. You had a silent mimetic badass. You had Spider-Man meets the Stig, and you blew it. So yeah, that's pretty much how this would go. The biggest takeaway from this, if you're still watching this, by the way, thank you very much. Like, share, subscribe, enable notifications, all that YouTube stuff. Final takeaways from all this, none of these guys are getting jobs immediately. There are no big money contracts to be offered right now, and I think most promotions are in survival mode. Promotions with a lot, as I mentioned earlier, you've got promotions with far fewer resources than WWE doing a more ethical job of doing right by their employees, but those are also the promotions that have the biggest problem trying to stay in business. They're the ones who are going to be hurt the most, especially ones like Ring of Honor that don't have oh god, New Japan Television, what's going to happen with that now? Yeah, so I don't know if there are going to be jobs for these guys, but once everything starts up, they'll be out of the news cycle. If I had to pick 3 from sort of this list, or 3 acts, the Revival are the last 2, cool. I'd take the Revival, I'd take Rusev, and I'd find a way to get my hands on maybe Zack Ryder, ? Well, congratulations to Dash Wilder for winning a pointless Rumble. Yeah, the problem is, I think for about half of these guys... Oh, Mike and Maria Kanellis. That's the other act I would get my hands on. Rusev, Revival, Revolt, and the Kanellises. But for right now, that's my thought/rant on the mass firings of April 2020. Thank you for watching. I'm Ryu Sensei for Last Wrestling Podcast. He's not going to WrestleMania, but hopefully, for all of these guys, it is onward and upward. Thank you for watching. Catchphrase sign off.